There's nothing more powerful.
And then I switched to Liberty.
It's AC from the Lexical core team. Here to just kind of continue on the getting started with the React series for Lexical. Last video, which was the first video, we talked a bit about just like how to get started with Lexical Composer, how to wire up the plain text plugin, how to just basically make it so you can start inputting some text and seeing it come up on the screen. And so in this video, I'd like to elaborate a little more on that and try to start getting us more towards how can we implement some rich text features, how do we configure the editor, particularly themes and node registrations and concepts like that. So we'll touch on a bit of that, and hopefully by the end we'll have an editor that has a couple of rich text features, and then we can build on that in future videos. So without further ado, let's dive in. Cool, so this is the glyph editor that we've been working with. Glyph is just a code name, random name for an editor. Nothing special there. So as you can see, we have the plain text plugin we added last time. We have history plugin, on change plugin. We don't need on change plugin, really. That was just a demonstration of how to set up a custom plugin. So let's get rid of that guy. We'll keep history plugin. That's what controls our undo and redo functionality, which you want for pretty much any editor. So let's keep that. We won't need this. So let's see. Don't need that anymore. Don't need that anymore. Cool. Okay. So a little bit of cleanup there. Don't need that anymore. Don't need that anymore. Cool. Okay. So a little bit of cleanup there. Looks like our editor's still working over here. So no worries there. Cool. So let's talk about how it was adding some rich text functionality to the editor. So let's take a look at the docs. I think there is some information about adding rich text somewhere. Okay, cool. So Lexical Rich Text provides a starting point for Lexical users by registering listeners for a basic set of commands, copy paste, selection of arrow keys, headings, formatted text, and block quotes. Cool. Okay, so that sounds like what we need. And so I think the first thing we're going to want to do is probably make sure I have this installed. Oh, you know what? I don't need to install it because it's a dependency of Lexical React. So we're going to use the Lexical React, the rich text plugin from Lexical React. So that's a downstream dependency we don't need to worry about. So we're good there. So all we need to do here should be change this to rich text plugin. So now instead of plain text plugin, we're importing rich text plugin. It has roughly the same interface. So let's go check out what the difference is here. So I can still type. That's sweet. Refresh the page. We got our changes, still type. If I do Command B, I get bold text, Command I, italic text. So it looks like we have some, is that additional functionality? Or did that work with plain text plugin? Just gonna double check here. Can't remember exactly how we deal with those styles. Yeah, it doesn't work with plain text plugin. Yeah, so we don't have the command listeners wired up. So you can see, like, if you use plain text plugin, I'm hitting Command B, Command I, which are the Mac shortcuts for adding bold and italic styles to text. You can see how it worked with the rich text plugin. When I change back to plain text plugin over here, then it doesn't work because we don't have Lexical. One of the things rich text plugin is doing, as the documentation kind of stated, is wiring up command listeners. So it's registering command listeners so that Lexical knows when you hit this key combination, Command B or Command I, for instance, to do a certain set of operations. In this case, applying bold or italic formatting to the text. And so plain text plugin doesn't register those command listeners, so that's why you're not seeing that happen. I couldn't remember for a second if we included that functionality in plain text or not, so that's why I had a bit of just had to remember exactly what's going on there. So yeah, let's go back to rich text plugin. get rid of plain text plugin, double check this, make sure it works the way I think. Command B, Command I. Oh, I don't know what that is. Cool. All right, sweet. So that seems to be working pretty well. We're able to add formats to the text, and that is good. And actually, you'll notice about, like, you can't see me doing this, but I hit Command B and then Command I. Nothing happens for Command I. If I hit Command I, then I get italics. So I can toggle on and off, but I can't yet combine formats. And we'll talk a little bit about like how to do that later in like the kind of theming section of this talk. So that's pretty much it for rich text plugin as far as just like the basic stuff it does, right? So like one of the things the docs mentioned, besides wiring up features such as headings, formatted text. We look at the formatted text a bit. We haven't done headings. So maybe we should try to add headings in. So let's make that the goal for the rest of this. But before we get there, I want to talk a little bit about theming and how it impacts rich text and lexical specifically. So if we actually go back, let's go back to rich text plugin and just type some stuff, and we apply bold formatting. So you can see here that like this is the lexical content editable. This is like the content editable that we're listening for events on. This is what's controlled by the editor. And you can see like we're rendering the editor state to HTML here. We use a strong tag wrapped around the DOM text node to apply styles. To apply bold. And so like what's actually happening here is like we don't have any theming applied yet, but since we're using a strong tag to convey the semantics of bold text in browsers in HTML, then the user agent styles, like Chrome's styles it associates with strong are applied by default there. And you can see like the same thing happening if we switch over to italics, Command I. Now we have the EM tag, and once again, no additional styles applied there, no classes. Just the user agent styles kind of determining how that text should be decorated. So that's all the browser doing that. So all we're doing right now is changing like what's happening as far as wrapping text nodes in different DOM nodes that have semantic meaning, emphasis, or strong. So if we wanted to do something a little bit different, right? So we want to like change how we're styling bold text. We could actually go into our theme here, and there's a little bit of documentation on this. It should be better, but if we go to theming, we can see that like we basically will apply. If you give us a class name for a specific key, we'll apply that class name on the DOM node that Lexical renders in different situations. And so we pass this theme into the initial config for the editor. It's just a list of key value pairs, with the key is like some thing that has a meaning like paragraph or whatever, and that, and then the value is the class name that you want to apply to that particular thing. And so it's actually open-ended. You can obviously create your own custom nodes and then like apply these classes, and we'll probably talk about how to do that in a future video. But these are sort of the ones that are built into Lexical, and for different plugins and things you'll add, those nodes will apply these classes to the HTML. So if you look here, we have text, and we have bold, italic, code, strike through, like a lot of different things that we can do here, right? And so what we can do here is we can actually apply our own class to change how we want bold text, text with a semantic bold meaning, to be rendered in Lexical. So let me just show you an example, right? So we have this theme, we have nothing in it now. What we'll do now is add the text key, and then we'll add bold. Whoops, can't type today. And the class name will be like, let's say like, probably single quotes, glyph, editor, bold, just to be like kind of specific. And so now we have this class name. What we should see happening is like that class name actually being applied to the strong tags we saw earlier in the DOM when we make the text bold. I might have to refresh to make this happen. I'm not sure what's up about auto refresh, but that's what we expect it to. So let's inspect that. Yeah, so now after we refresh, we can see that there's like a strong tag, and we have this class that we just added. So what Lexical is doing here is like whenever you add that formatting to the text, we're wrapping that text node in a strong tag, and then we're adding this class to that tag that has just the semantic meaning. So now the class. Doing anything, so you still see just the user agent styles there, right, which is like the bold text. But if we go into our styles.css, let's actually say glyph editor bold, and let's do something cool like color. Is there like a neon yellow? No, it's not a thing. All right, let's just say yellow then. So now we want bold text to be yellow. Oh, check it out. So really like, just kind of, I don't know why you want to do this, right? Like maybe you want all your bold text to be yellow, maybe not. But you can do the same thing with editor italics. Italic, maybe. And let's make italics be like aqua? That sounds good. Let's do aqua. All right, so now we have aqua for italics. And we'll have to go back to the theme and say italic. I don't think it is plural. Let's double check. This should be typed, but I'm not getting autocomplete for some reason. Let's do single quotes with editor italic. And now when we do italics, we should end up seeing like the aquamarine color. With editor italic, did I get that right? With editor italic. It's not being added right now. There we go. Now we have the aqua color in there. You can see the class being applied. So that's basically how theming. I mean, that's like there's a little more to theming, especially when it comes to like extending nodes and creating your own nodes. And then we get to that probably in a future video. But that's kind of like the basics of theming. You can actually just kind of look at how, what themes are, or you can look at what classes are being applied to different nodes. I'd like to do some better documentation around like which of the keys in here are being applied to like which node types in Lexical. But this is essentially how it works, and like it's pretty straightforward. I mean, you can guess most of it. So like OL and UL for lists, and like headings, different levels, and quotes and paragraphs and all that stuff. So that's pretty straightforward. But that's how theming works. And so as we talked about earlier, let's see if we can figure out something a little more complicated that combines a few different concepts. So let's add support for headings in our rich text editor. So as we talked about kind of in the documentation, they're like rich text plugin adds support for heading nodes. And what we really need is a way to import those. To insert those into the editor. Like right now, we don't have any commands that would allow us to do that, right? So there's no like for instance with bold, we're listening for command B, and that's something the rich text plugin is doing. And we can actually probably go take a quick look at that to make it a little more clear what's happening under the hood here. So, oops, not the test. Let's go rich text plugin. So we go take a look at this, and we can see that in here there should be, of course, we have an abstraction into a hook, which has an abstraction here. Cool. So you can see all these commands being registered, right? And somewhere in here there's format text command, which is going to be somewhere else. There's going to be an event listener. So let's just go all the way down the chain, right? We're registering a command here called format text command, which means whenever someone dispatches the command, they call editor.dispatch command format, and they pass in format text command, we'll trigger this listener. And this listener is basically just going to do some checks about the selection, and then it's going to call selection.format text and pass in the desired format, right? So that's not super crazy. So the interesting part is like, where do we actually dispatch this command, right? So if we go to like editor.dispatch command, there's gonna be a million of these, but there should be one that's format text command. So here. So this is in the playground actually. I would have expected to see this somewhere in this before. I guess I wasn't including. Anyway, my mistake. But yeah, so that's in a little different spot. So this is just dispatch command. It looks like we're importing it directly from the core here instead of using the method on the editor. That's why I didn't find it in my original search. But yeah, so this is basically like, this is called Lexical events. This is a file that exposes basically like setup for a whole bunch of different user events. And one of those, and like just kind of like sets up DOM event listeners for those so that we can respond basically usually by dispatching Lexical commands and doing other things in the editor. So what we're actually doing is like, if we look down, where are we here? So this is on before input, which I'm guessing is running on before. I think it's running on before input. We have a switch on the input type, which is something we get from the DOM event. And then if the event type is format bold, then we dispatch that format text command with bold as the payload. That's the format. And if you remember, if we go back here, where was it? Here. Yeah, this is where we're registered. This is like, that dispatching that command here is causing this command listener, which is registered to the state of dispatching the command here to listening for it here, and then executing selection.format text, which is, has the complicated logic involved in actually like adding that format and all the different scenarios that you could have. How you're going from like user hitting command B to DOM event being dispatched to Lexical command being dispatched to like Lexical state being updated, and then the state being written to the DOM, and your class being applied, right, to kind of bring it all full circle. So that's how that works in Lexical. So what we don't have is there's no keyboard shortcut that I'm aware of, at least for adding a heading that we register by default. And so we need, while we can add bold by default, so we just include that with rich text plugin via command B. We don't have the same for heading, so you need you need to listen for some user event, and then either dispatch the appropriate command or like just insert the heading yourself in response to that. So I'll kind of give you an example of how we can do that. But the first thing we need to do is we have to, anytime you add a node type in Lexical, you have to register it on the editor, except for the core node types. That's why we don't have to do it for plain text plugin. So it's not necessary for plain text plugin because it uses just the nodes in the core library. If you wanted to add more functionality on top of plain text plugin, say you wanted to add headings, heading plugin or something, add heading support, you would need to register heading node or some other node to handle headings. So we can do that here in our initial config. We can add a list called nodes, and we can actually import heading node from somewhere. Lexical rich text. Yeah, I guess that's. And I might have to install that package. Anyway, okay, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, we have to register heading node. And if we go take a look at heading node, this is actually just like the node. We won't go too deep into this right now, but okay, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, we have to register heading node. And if we go take a look, let's see, heading node. Here we go. So this is the class that encapsulates the functionality related to heading. So like one of the things you can see that it's doing is just in create DOM. We actually get the editor config passed in. So this is what the function that controls what Lexical is actually rendering to the DOM for a given node in the Lexical state. And so when we add a heading node to Lexical state, and Lexical goes to render that to the DOM, it's going to call create DOM. It's going to create an element. Document create element. This is a DOM API passing in the tag, which is going to be one of like H1, H2, H3, H4, whatever, right? And you can see here we get a reference to the theme, and we get that from the config. That's the thing that we applied further up. Right. So this is the theme that we applied or that we set up earlier in our config. We're getting that in the create DOM. And then we can actually, you see, we're grabbing. This is in the core, but we're grabbing the heading key. It's the class name associated with the heading key, and then we're just adding that to the DOM element that we're returning from this function. And that's essentially how it all works. And so that's one of the things we're doing in heading node. Other things we're doing are like setting up import DOM. This is determining like which when you like paste HTML, for instance, or deserialize HTML in general using one of our functions. This is determining like which DOM nodes this node is saying I can handle H1, H2, H3, these different like HTML tags, right? And then it's like, here's my conversion logic for that. And so we'll go into that deeper in a different video. And so I'll stop there, but that's kind of like the basics of what heading node is doing. Any node does similar things in Lexical. So let's go back to Glyph, see if we can add. We added support for heading node here. What we will need to do now is like just basically trigger inserting it somehow. So what user event are we going to respond to actually insert a heading node? And so what we can do is actually we got a plugin for that, and that should be pretty straightforward. I'm not going to worry too much about like styling and everything. Let's just call it function my heading plugin, and this is going to return we're going to actually return a React commit from this. So for now, let's return null, but we're going to change that in a minute. So what I'm thinking here is we're going to make a button. This is just the dead simplest thing you can do. It doesn't really even make sense for like a lot of editors probably, but for right now, we're just going to make a button that inserts a heading node that has some specific content. So it's not like select something and convert it to a heading. It's simpler than that. It's just like we'll insert a heading node that says like hello world or something like that, right? So it'll be pretty simple, and then we can kind of expand on that example in future videos or as we move forward. So say you have like a heading plugin here, or just a plugin React component. What we would do here is then we want to listen for a specific DOM event. So we're going to listen for a click on this button, and then it'll just be like, we'll just say heading for now. It's kind of been a while since I coded a raw button like this in HTML or in React, but I think it worked fine. So here we'll have a mouse event, and then when we click this, we're basically going to do an editor. Well, first thing we need to do here is constant. So we need to get access to the editor so we can actually update the editor to add a heading to it. And so for that, we need our composer context back. And then here, editor.update. So we're calling this because we're going to be making a change to the editor, updating the editor state. And what we're going to do is actually insert a heading node. And so, that's a return type. Okay, fine. Next TypeScript. What's the problem here? Mouse event. Okay, fine. Updating the editor state. what we're going to do is actually insert a heading node. And so, let's see, return type. Okay, fine. Thanks, TypeScript. What's the problem here? Mouse event. Okay, fine. It can be that. Is that what you want? Okay, I'm actually not sure what TypeScript wants from me here.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I guess it was just React got mouse event. Anyway, so we add a click handler there, and then we're just going to do get root, which gets us the root of the editor. And then we'll do, let's say, actually, we don't even need to really declare any more constants, probably. We'll just append to the root. We need to import this. Okay. There we go. Okay. So let's say, so we'll create a heading. We'll import create heading node from Lexical rich tags. That's going to like create a heading node. Let's make it an H1, and then we'll want to append to that. Without any content, the heading node won't say anything. It's just like an empty H1 tag. So we want to append a text node to it. And like I said, for now, we're just going to kind of hard code the values. So it'll be create text node, you know, hello world. And I think we need to import this as well. So then, we have this plugin made. All we really should need to do is we're going to have to position this button probably. Same. And then once we click it, we should actually see the heading node get added into the editor. So let's say, what is it, my header plugin? Let's add that to our composer children. now we have this heading button here. Looks like that's kind of wrought havoc with our styling a little bit.
There's not. Fix that by just going over to our styles. Wait, where is the styling for the app itself? Here, where's the placeholder style? Okay, so I think what's wrong is we probably just need to go. It's expanded the height of the parent container. So let's go 48. Okay, so now we're good. Like we have the placeholder. Still not quite right, but let's go by 8s again. Like 6. Better. Should just stop and do the math, but I'm not going to. Okay, so now we're in place. We have a placeholder back where it's supposed to be. You can see we have our heading button there at the top. So what we can do is okay. So I think what's wrong is we probably just need to go app itself. So this my heading plugin. Let's add that to our compose.
Dhuwur ngene piye anune kamerane sampean?
Enggak piye.
Tok luwe apa? Jaga.
Tripod.
Now we have this heading button here. Looks like that's kind of wrought havoc with our styling a little bit. I'm going to fix that by just going over to here, the placeholder style. Okay, so I think what's wrong is we probably just need to go. It's expanded the height of the parent container. Let's go 48. Okay, so now we're good. Like we have the placeholder. Still not quite right, but let's go by 8s again. Like 6. Better. Should just stop and do the math, but I'm not going to. Okay, so now we're in place. We have a placeholder back where it's supposed to be. You can see we have our heading button there at the top. And so what we can do is what we expect is when we click that heading button, we're actually going to see a heading node added to the editor with the text hello world. So let's see if that works for us. Cool. That was good. And so the last thing we can kind of show here is how we can use the theme. Oops. Chaos. All right, let's use the theme to actually add a class here. Let's go glyph editor h1. Save that.
there. So let's go to our styles. With editor H1, let's give it a background color of
So, jalani naman sa sisi.
Okay.
Ayun mo yan, sa tane.
No.
there. So let's go to our styles. With editor H1, let's give it a background color of about blanched almond. So, so give it a background of blanched almond. Now we should expect to see that class applied. I'll have to refresh, and then let's see the class applied to the heading, and we should see that blanched almond color for all the heading. Yeah, so that's how you would do something with heading, and we so let's go to our stuff. Like lists and formatted text, quotes, so on. Text plugin. You want to highlight some text. Maybe you type "Hello World," and you want to highlight that, and actually convert that into a heading. Right? You want to select it and convert it into a heading rather than you want to insert a heading just as "Hello World." Right? That's not super useful for most editors. Usually it's like let's highlight something and like convert it, or like let's just insert a heading, and then when the user starts typing it, whatever text they type is in heading format. So that's a little more complicated. We expose some helper methods in Lexical for that to kind of like wrap the selection in a certain block type. It's called set block types, I think. Might look into that in a future video. Getting pretty close to that, right? We have a heading button here. All I have to do here is basically like add a plugin to return some DOM or something based on the React element, and then just add some plugin here, or just a plugin. Let's use a theme with under a. So give it back to another question. There are obviously lots of other rich text features you can add, but this is just kind of something like you want to highlight some text, then convert it or like that, and then we might look into that in a future video. The other thing to kind of point out here is like this is like add a plugin to return some DOM, whatever, right? And so all I have to do here is basically like add a plugin to return some DOM or something in this case a React element, and then just add to my composer and then position it correctly. Right? I didn't have to position this one at all because it's just like right above the content and everything else out perfectly. I had to move my placeholder down to accommodate the extra height in the parent container. But like that's pretty trivial, right? So you can imagine like having a toolbar plugin that's just returning a div and it has a whole bunch of buttons in it, right? And maybe you have like a flex, display setting on that, and that'd be pretty straightforward. So like really like the primitives for building something like a toolbar are kind of here. You just have to add the buttons or add drop down or whatever you want to do, and then wire up the appropriate user event listeners to actually trigger the editor. So hopefully this is a helpful overview of rich text plugin, like a little bit of like theming and toolbar functionality and so on and so forth, and also a little bit about how Lexical works in terms of handling user events. We'll definitely keep going and expand on this in more videos, but we'll be all for this one. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it and learned something.